This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag. Welcome to the podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. I'm joined by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
All right, getting right back into the book where we left off. We are in the beginning chapters of the book Blood and Thunder, the epic story of Kit Carson and the conquest of the American West, written by author Hampton Sides. And we're going to get right back into where we left off with the story of Kit Carson. It's going to get a little wild right now, so brace yourself, Brent, for some frontier medicine. All right, here we go. Before settlers like the Boones and the Carsons arrived, the country along the Missouri River, like so much of North America, was heavily forested. To clear land for planting, pioneers would sometimes girdle trees, cutting deep rings around the trunks to deaden them. And the most expeditious way for farmers to remove dense thickets of timber was to set them afire.
That's what I would have done. Girdling a tree?
Your mic's too far away.
Girdling a tree?
Yeah.
I've never heard of this.
You cut the bark out, so then the sap can't run up the tree, and then the tree dies.
Sometimes called ring barking.
Yeah, it's just a terrible thing to do to a poor tree.
Yeah, just put out its misery. Light it on fire.
They'd kill it, and then they could burn it after it was...
Is this like...
Yeah, they girdled the trees. But, to remove dense thickets of timbers is a little faster to just burn it.
Mm-hmm.
One day in 1818, Lindsey Carson was burning the woods nearby.
And Lindsey is
his father.
Okay.
When a large limb broke off from a burning tree, killing him instantly. Yep.
His dad's death is a sentence-long footnote.
Yep. In 1818, a burning tree branch fell on him and killed him. Dead.
Okay, I don't want to speak ill dead, but I would feel in a lot of ways that's the gene pool weeding its. Look up. We have next to.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. When I hear stuff like this,
you don't become an old buck if you don't look up in a tree.
I am reluctant, to throw too many stones because it's like those people that are taking pictures of their spouse, on the rim of the Grand Canyon.
And they step back.
And they're looking through the viewfinder and they're like, okay, one more, just back, left, back. And they step off a cliff and die. It's that sort of stupidity where you're just like, what?
Maybe he was drunk, some kind of intoxication, smoke in the eyes. Like, is there more to it or is it just branch?
They lived rough and tumble lives back then. And he just tired, working hard, got caught.
Look up. Look up, bro. You know how much effort it is to look up?
I know.
It's less effort for me to look up in the air than it is to look down.
The paranoid survive, Brent.
Agreed.
The paranoid survive. Kit was only 8 at the time, 8 years old, and his life would be profoundly changed. Although some of Lindsey Carson's children had grown up and moved out of the house, Rebecca Carson still had 10 children to raise on her own.
Woof.
The Carsons were reduced to a desperate poverty. Kit's schooling ceased altogether, and he spent his time working the fields, doing chores around the cabin, and hunting meat for his family. As Carson put it years later, I jumped to my rifle and threw down my spelling book, and there it lies.
Amen. I like that. I get behind the spelling book. It makes you sound like a wizard, though.
Briefly, Kit became a ward of a neighbor. Then in 1822, Kit's mother remarried, and the obstreperous boy, Brent, look that one up.
How do you...
Obstreperous. Obstreperous. We need to know what that means. We're all getting smarter.
Obstreperous. Noisy and difficult to control. The boy is cocky and obstreperous.
Why not just cocky? We're all expanding our vocabulary here, folks.
I think it's
this is what this is all about.
The dumb thing is that they would only call like a young boy that. You know what I mean? That's a word that is set aside just for young boy children.
Yeah, same with cocky. So then in 1822, his mother remarried, and the cocky, obstreperous boy soon rebelled against his new stepfather.
Surprise.
At age 14, Kit was apprenticed to a well-known saddler named David Workman in the small settlement of Franklin, Missouri. The The boy hated this close and tedious shop work. For nearly 2 years, he sat at his bench each day, repairing harnesses and shaping scraps of hide with leatherworking tools. Because Franklin was situated on the eastern end of the newly cleared Santa Fe Trail, Workman's clientele largely consisted of trappers and traders, and the shop was often filled with stirring tales from the far west. Bedraggled tribe of men in their musky animal skins and peltries must have impressed the young boy mightily, and one senses how the worm of his imagination began to turn. Sitting miserably at his station, with his shears and his awls and his crimping tools, transfixed by the bold stories of these feral men, Kit began to dream of Santa Fe, the name signifying not so much a specific place as a new kind of existence, a life of expanse and possibility in fresh precincts of the continent. The Santa Fe Trail had opened only 2 years earlier, and for young Missourians with any spark of ambition or wanderlust, the burgeoning commerce of the prairies had become a compelling romance. Out west, new fortunes beckoned. For generations, Spain had forbidden the all-U.S. trade with Santa Fe, and American travelers caught in New Mexico were routinely arrested and treated as hostile spies. But when Mexico won independence in 1821, the new officials in Mexico City were eager for American goods and the tariffs that could be levied against them. A veil had been lifted. Suddenly, Americans were welcome. Soon, the long road between the ancient capital and the westernmost settlements was creased with traffic. A new term came into vogue for those leaving the settlements for Santa Fe, a term that conveyed the excitement of piercing the unknown. Upon departing the familiar world of Missouri, travelers were said to be jumping off. Yeah, jumping off to your death, probably.
Middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I've seen those propaganda pieces. Come move out here. This place is awesome.
This is the edge, man. Jump off and
see what happens.
Yeah. Enchanted by the stories he kept hearing and anxious to see different countries, Kit resolved to break the contract of his apprenticeship, although he considered his employer a good man. Carson found the working suffocating. The business did not suit me, he said in loud understatement, and I concluded to leave him. Carson realized that if he stayed with workmen, I would have to pass my life in the labor that was distasteful to me. Carson doesn't say much. He just says, just nothing embellished, no extra words. Just, he was a good man. I didn't like the work and I left. That's his story. Like, you'll see it throughout the book.
I had a roommate in college.
He reminds me of Ryan Lampers.
Well,
my friend Ryan Lampers.
I was about to say that.
In some ways. Remember how we talked about how small he is?
Mm-hmm. He's not a big dude. Yeah. Firecracker.
So it says, in August of 1826, at the age of 16, Carson secretly signed on as a laborer with the large merchant caravan heading west to Santa Fe. So this was 16 years old, and he's ditching his work, and he secretly signed on. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? The caravan leader asked Carson when he applied for a job. Nothing, replied Carson, except I can shoot straight.
Hey, you're heading out west. That's skill number one.
He was given a slot as a cavvy boy, the lowliest job on a caravan. What's a cavvy boy? C-A-V-V-Y.
Cavvy boy.
Caravan? The cavvy boy was hired and was a hired hand charged with caring for the caballada, the herd of spare horses, mules, and oxen that was always brought along to replace those that wore out or died on the long journey. Okay.
I'm not
Caballada.
sure what cavvy boy is. It's got to be some kind of slang, but when I look it up, just a bunch of guinea pig info comes up. So
no, it says that he's there it's the spare horses, mules, and oxen. It was menial cowboy work, herding, feeding, and reprimanding the animals, but he loved it. He was grateful to find himself sitting in saddles every day instead of making them. And so Carson jumped off. As the boy made his way west, David Workman, his employer back in Franklin, posted a notice in the Missouri Intelligencer, the local paper, announcing his apprentice's flight. It was the first occasion that Kit Carson's name would ever appear in print.
But not the last.
Notice is hereby given to all persons that Christopher Carson, a boy about 16 years old, small of his age, but thick-set, light hair, ran away from the subscriber living in Franklin, Howard County, Missouri, to whom he had been bound to learn the saddler's trade on or about the 1st of September last. He is supposed to have made his way towards the upper part of the state, All persons are notified not to harbor, support, or assist said boy under the penalty of the law. 1 cent reward will be given to any person who will bring back the boy.
1 cent?
1 cent. 1 penny.
Ooh. Big spender. At no given point in time has 1 cent been worth wrestling a, what was it, a obstreperous boy.
Obstreperous.
Good luck with that, sir.
It says Workman was required by law to report his apprentice's truancy. So
he had to by law.
He had to by law. So Workman was a good dude. He had to do it by law.
So he threw out a penny. He's like, bring it back, boys. Good job, Workman.
Just wait. Reading between the lines, however, it is clear that the saddler, Workman, was less than zealous in his efforts to secure Carson's return, and that, in fact, he may have been aiding the getaway. Workman's advertisement did not appear until a full month after Carson left. Waiting so long, by providing a false clue as to which direction Carson was headed, and by offering such a conspicuously slim reward, one senses that Workman was smiling on Carson's decision to light out for the West and perhaps wishing him Godspeed.
All right, Workman's a homie. That's legit. Heck yeah.
In his autobiography, Carson recalled only one incident from his first trek across the plains. One day, as the caravan worked its way along the great bend of the Arkansas River in present-day southwestern Kansas, a traveler in the party named Andrew Brodus had an accident. The wagon train had passed into buffalo country, which was rife with wolf packs that preyed on the migrating herds. Spotting a wolf in the distance and presumably fearing that it would attack the caravan stock, Brodus reached for his rifle from his wagon. The gun prematurely discharged, and he shot himself point blank in the right arm.
Ooh.
Not something you want to be doing back then.
No,
on a caravan.
No, that ball's like this big, bro. Like it's going through their little pioneer arms like straw. Are you kidding me?
In a few days, the wound became infected, and then gangrene set in. No doctors were traveling in the caravan, but it was obvious to everyone that Brodus's arm would have to be amputated if he hoped to live.
Hold up. So, back up. There's not a doctor. An amputation has to take place.
Yeah, brother. Yeah. This was 1816.
They've got to have some saws, minimum.
No, this is 18. When did he jump off?
I thought you said no, they didn't have
1826 was his jump off. This is 1826. Brodus was in utter agony now, his pitiful cries going out with each jounce and rattle of his wagon. Still, Brodus would not let the others perform the inevitable, and several more precious days passed with the line of putrefaction steadily creeping up his arm. Finally, the party could not take the screaming anymore. They held Brodus down, and one of the men sliced through the dead flesh with a razor. Another man then went to work on the arm bone with an old saw, while a third cauterized the severed arteries by applying a piping hot king bolt that had been removed from one of the wagons and heated in the fire.
So they took a wagon bolt off, and that's what they seared it with? Oh.
Yeah, let me read that to you again. Finally, the party could not take the screaming anymore. They held Brodus down, and one of the men sliced through the dead flesh with a razor. Another man then went to work on the arm bone with an old saw, while a third cauterized the severed arteries by applying a piping hot king bolt that had been removed from one of the wagons and heated in the fire. Now, this sounds like a great surgery, like they knew what they were doing.
This is just pioneers just making, this is like straight MacGyver in the wilderness.
Burning,
right,
I think that might be a skill we should learn, cauterizing wounds.
It's pretty straightforward. Like there's not a lot to it.
Oh, man.
I'm curious how big this, okay, a king bolt's fairly big.
It's just a big metal bolt.
Yeah, but I was wondering, like, was it one press? Was it two press? Was it three press? Did he have to do a little cross stitching?
Oh, dude.
Did he just hit a major artery?
As Brodus shrieked, Kit watched in wide-eyed amazement and tried to help out however he could. According to one probably specious account, he volunteered to wield the scalpel and actually made the first cut. Certainly, the ordeal gave the 16-year-old boy a vivid idea of the sorts of crude and creative expedients to which men on the prairie were often compelled to resort. Yeah, that's a lesson you won't forget. At last, the operation was complete and Brodus's cries subsided. The men applied a protective plaster to his stump composed of tar, taken from a wagon axle.
I was going to say, do they tar him up? Because that's all they're going to have.
Given the atrocious hygiene common on the caravans, most of the party did not expect Brodus to survive. But the wound soon healed without infection. As Carson put it, Andrew Brodus was perfectly well by the time the caravan crossed into New Mexico.
Minus an arm, Carson. Good Lord. You're fine, bro. You had 2 arms. Chill.
Look, dude, I mean, it sucks, but there's no sense in dwelling on it. Like, what's done is done. It's spilt milk. Move on. You know, it's funny. Lampers and I have had a couple debates about Lonesome Dove. And when he gets his leg shot with all the arrows and then he won't get it amputated to live because he'd rather die than lose his leg. No. I've always been like, dude, just cut it off. Have you seen some Indians like making rounds on one leg? Like, you've seen some people move. I'm just like, it's kind of like quitting because you didn't get the trophy, you know, because you didn't win. It's like, dude, your leg is gone.
Remember?
Cut it off and then be a man and get out there and work with what you got left.
Remember when we
don't give up? I don't know.
We were at the Western Hunting Summit, and they were asking you if you're going to go on the hike that one day, and you weren't feeling super great.
Yeah, I was on a backpack race, and I pulled sort of the tendon above that attaches to my calf.
Audible pop.
And so it was pretty painful, and I'm walking around. Gentleman is there with a missing leg from the hip.
But you didn't know that.
I didn't know. And I'm like going, man. And they're like, are you going to be able to shoot on the course tomorrow? And I was like sitting there going, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, it's going to cause more damage than good. I mean, I can walk with the hobble, you know? And dude looks at me with the missing leg and he's like, pulls his pants up and it's all metal. He's like, no excuses. And it puts it right into perspective. It's like, I'm
shooting the course tomorrow.
Basically, I've said that before too. Like, I went to the CrossFit gym back in the day a lot, and there were a couple of folks there that didn't have arms or legs, and they do like clean and jerks, and they did movements that you're like, how? The guy missing an arm and he's still cleaning heavy loads, and you're like, what? You know, and they just put like a rubber band and they like,
I know a guy who's only got a thumb on this one hand and he does cleans.
Yeah.
And so he holds that whole bar with his thumb.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, those things put life into perspective. So yeah, Lonesome Dove, I'm still not convinced. It kind of annoyed me the way it ended, in that regard. Like, maybe I just have too much fight in me, but
I've got to go out swinging. There's no.
I'm just kind of like, you know, yeah, would it be hard on one leg? Yeah, but it wasn't. You could get you do what you can and you move on. You see lots of vets, you know, given we have better prosthetics, but dude, you could just tie a 2x4 on there and you can start making your.
That's what I was gonna say, man.
I've seen the pirate movies. I've seen the peg legs.
Not only that, but like since growing this beard,
yeah,
it has min-maxed my looks. Women are either super into this look or they're not about it at all.
Yeah.
There's got to be some chicks that are into the peg leg thing. There just is. If you lean into it hard, get a patch.
I've been married like 25 years. Doesn't cross my mind.
A bird.
Brent's over there going, how would it help me with the ladies?
I could make this work.
So yeah, his leg was perfectly well by the time the caravan crossed into Mexico.
His leg?
Yeah. I said his arm was perfectly well.
There we go.
Andrew Brodus was perfectly well.
Good job, Brody.
As fascinated as he was by life on the Santa Fe Trail, Kit Carson did not apparently think much of the city, Santa Fe. The caravan groaned into the old capital. It says that he scarcely even mentioned the place in his autobiography. He didn't like it. As soon as he could,
many amenities.
As soon as he could, he made his way up to Taos, the mountain village of whitewashed adobe houses some 70 miles north of the capital. So he got out of the capital, out of the city, and found the rough and ready life there much more to his liking. Taos would be his home sentimentally, if not in fact for the rest of his life. That's where he'd marry, where he'd have a house, that kind of thing. Spread on the sage plains at the feet of a particularly stunning stretch of the serrated Sangre de Cristo Mountains, Don Fernando de Taos was a cluttered old Spanish settlement of a few thousand souls built close to an even older settlement of Pueblo Indians, who continued to live as they had for centuries in a mud citadel of terraced apartment buildings stacked 7 stories high. The town took its name from the thick chokes of willows that line the stream flowing through the pueblo. Taos means people of the red willows in the Tiwa language. Tiwa. I don't know what that is. Tiwa. Tiwa. Is that like Pueblo? I don't know. Taos. A few miles west of the village, the Rio Grande had cut a deep gorge into the earth with the cold white water spilling through a chasm 600 feet below the canyon rim. Wow. Taos was also the capital of the southwestern fur trade. Fur trappers and mountain men associated with various outfits, Hudson's Bay, the American Fur Company, the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, spent their winters in Taos.
Tiwa is the name of the people, but it's also just the name of a language, the language of the people, and also a singer from Nigeria.
It says here they mended, the people of Taos and the fur company traders, their traps, and often blew their summer earnings in sprees of dancing, gambling, lovemaking, and booze. So it was a trapper town. It's where they fled when it got really cold and nasty, and it's where they spent their winters. Their poison of choice was a local moonshine, Brent, known as Taos Lightning.
These people, everything is lightning when it comes to moonshine. Moonshiners love their lightning, Bri.
A wheat liquor that had become a form of frontier currency among trappers, Mexicans, and Indians alike. The trappers were a spirited enclave in this remote provincial outpost. Yeah.
Those mud citadels you're talking about, they're like stacked.
Yeah. It says the locals resented and at the same time envied these uncouth foreigners who, with their boisterous wanderings and their easy squaw arrangements, lived apart from the stark morality of the padres within the pueblos. Kit was drawn to the strange fraternity of the mountain men. He was entranced by their freedom, their ready competence, their otherworldly air, and he vowed to become one himself as soon as they would have him. That first winter, he was taken in by a trapper and explorer named Matthew Kincaid, who had been an old friend of his father's back in Missouri. From this seasoned frontiersman, Carson absorbed the elements of mountain living, staying in Kincaid's cabin through the snowy months, sitting before the fire in the gray tang of pinyon smoke. Kit began to practice Spanish and several Indian dialects. He learned how to sew his own buckskin clothing and how to make a good tight bed of corn husks draped in a buffalo robe. Venturing on his first bison hunt, he learned how to jerk the meat and turn it into fine pemmican, and how to enjoy the Plains Indian delicacy of the still hot liver. Sliced fresh from the pulsing animal and seasoned with bile squirted from its gallbladder.
Shut up.
It's true.
Seasoned with bile.
Squirted from his gallbladder. Yeah, Ranella actually did that. I think it was on a Meat Eater episode. He had to try it. And so he took it, put the bile on it, threw it in his in that episode, and he was like, he's like gagging on it a little bit. And he's like, well, I'm just going to say that's an acquired taste or something like that. He's like,
whoa.
He's like, wow, they must have craved it in some way that we don't today, or you know what I mean? But yeah, that's what they did. Yeah.
Slice. That's just what they did.
It's still hot liver, sliced fresh from the pulsing animal and seasoned with bile squirted from its gallbladder. Yeah.
I'm speechless. The idea of eating the liver is, I could do that. I could eat thinly sliced hot liver from a buffalo. I could do that.
Yeah. I eat raw, uncooked liver. Like, I'll barely sear it and eat it.
Mm-hmm.
It's better cooked, definitely.
Yeah.
But I ate a lot I lived in Japan for a couple of years. I ate a lot of raw meat, and I got over uncooked foods pretty
raw
quick.
Meat doesn't bother me too much, but liver.
We ate a lot of raw horse meat in Japan.
What's horse
other
taste
ones,
like?
Just red meat. It's kind of it's tender what we ate, and I don't know.
Couldn't really tell anything. You wouldn't have guessed it was anything special.
Nope. No.
Bile.
But man, people lose their mind when you eat horse. It's like when you eat dog. To me, it's just protein. It's one or the other. In 1828, after making a caravan journey to El Paso and working long stretches of the Santa Fe Trail, Kit signed on as a cook for an other mountain man named Ewing Young. And so the old 18-year-old kid apparently was a competent chef. But then these greasy wayfarers, accustomed, they didn't really care. They weren't that picky as they ate cougar, dog, mule, bear, and prairie oysters.
Whatever walked.
The nuts off of whatever they could get from. Were decidedly unpicky eaters. Meat's meat was their motto.
Meat's meat.
That's kind of how I feel too.
Bro, that sounds like Arby's motto. Meat is meat.
It was said that the trapper's diet was so full of lard that it made a mountain man shed rain like an otter and stand cold like a polar bear.
Yeah.
Probably.
Thickens you up.
By the spring of 1828, Kit had become proficient enough. This was about 2 years he'd been out from the time he left his saddler apprenticeship. He could speak enough Spanish to sign on as a translator for a merchant caravan that was bound for Chihuahua City, which is a 1,000-mile journey round trip along the Camino Real. The ancient capital, with its ornate cathedral, its beautiful stone aqueduct, and its stately colonial architecture. Chihuahua was the southernmost extent of his travels. Carson returned from his sojourn and took a job as a teamster in the Santa Rita copper mines of southwestern New Mexico. Then, in the spring of 1829, Ewing Young asked him to accompany a party of some 40 Taos fur men on a journey deep into unexplored Apache country to trap the tributaries of the Gila River. Carson had at last received his wish. Although still a greenhorn, he was embarking on his first full-fledged expedition as a trapper, an occupation that would hold his interest for the next dozen years. So it's been about 4 or 5 years since he left.
The saddle making?
Yeah, and he's gotten himself, well, has it been that long? It's been 3 years, I think. But he's been some places and he's done some things.
So he's like 18, 19-ish?
Yeah, 20.
He left
maybe
around 16?
Yeah, 19, 20, something like that probably. It was an insanely difficult way to make a living, but for Carson, that was no deterrent. A congressional survey of the trapping profession completed in 1831 described the mountain man existence this way. The whole operation is full of exposures and privations leading to premature exhaustion and disability. Few of those engaged in it reach an advanced stage of life. The labor is excessive, subsistence scanty, and the Indians are ever liable to sudden and violent paroxysms of passion, in which they spare neither friend nor foe. Paroxysms, that's a new one. Paroxysms of passion. That's one. Don't forget that word, folks. Paroxysms of passion.
Paroxysm.
Violent paroxysms.
Oh, sorry. I just have paroxysms. A sudden attack or violent expression of a particular emotion or activity. A paroxysm of weeping.
A violent activity of passion? It sounds a little like Hampton Sides was trying too hard right there.
Yeah. In a sudden paroxysm of jealousy, he threw her clothes out the window.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not ever using that one. It just doesn't flow.
Discard that one, folks. That not all can be bangers. All right.
So it says that he didn't know this, but due to books like and writers like Washington Irving and James Fenimore Cooper, James Fenimore Cooper wrote Last of the Mohicans, the fur trade would produce many legendary names like Jim Bridger and Jedediah Smith. Mm-hmm. It would do Jeremiah Johnson, John Johnson, but through a peculiar confluence of events, Kit Carson would become the most famous mountain man of them all. Carson's first paid voyage into the mountains was an especially ambitious and dangerous one. For in addition to the usual hardships, grizzlies, Indians, hypothermia, the prospect of a killing, thirst or starvation, the mission was strictly illegal. Really? Most trapping excursions ventured into the unclaimed wilderness of the Rocky Mountains, but this time Young planned to trap within the jealously held, if extremely porous, borders of Mexico. The government in Santa Fe rarely issued trapping permits to foreigners, so in order to confuse suspicious officials, Ewing led his party north into the mountains, then doubled back and rode southwest through the country of the Navajo and the Zuni before striking the Gila River. The Gila watershed had scarcely been trapped, so this is all like untouched country, and the young men found it incredibly rich in beaver and other game. They just lit in there and did it.
The border of Mexico is a place, I believe, from the beginning of time, we should just not mess around with.
It says,
build the wall, folks.
From Young and his international ragtag of mountain men, Carson began to soak up the nuances of the trapping trade, how to read the country and follow its most promising drainages, how to find the slicks along the banks where the beavers had slithered from their tree stands, how to set and scent the traps with a thick yellow oil called castoreum, taken from the beaver's sex glands, how to prepare the pack and the pelts, how to cache them safely in the ground to prevent theft and spoilage, and when the traps came up empty, how to invade and dismantle a dam and club the unsuspecting animals in the dark, wet den.
Don't they use castoreum?
In all trapping. It's kind of an irresistible smell or a strong smell. They use a lot.
Yeah, they use it for making perfumes too.
Is that what castor oil is made out of? From his new comrades, Carson learned
it's used as vanilla flavoring, as artificial like vanilla flavoring.
Yeah, that's why you always check for vanilla bean as the flavoring.
They use it like a gland, like a, what's that one, tarsal gland?
Yeah.
They have to pee on it to activate it. So it itself is full of oils and stuff like that. But what makes it stinky on the animal is them peeing on it.
Right, and the reaction.
Yeah, but if you take it out and you just squeeze that oil out, it smells very different, apparently.
Yep.
Like vanilla.
Carson learned to savor beaver tail boiled in an exquisite tenderness. To an exquisite tenderness, the trapper's signature dish. Ranella tried that as well.
Yeah, I'm still not sold on that one.
I bet you it's good if you cook it long enough. If I remember, he didn't quite cook it long enough, and it was less than ideal.
Yeah, when I Google beaver tail recipes, I keep getting like fried bread recipes. Apparently, it's a thing.
It said he became an expert with a hawk and rifle and a Green River skinning knife. He began to pick up the strange language of the mountain men, a colorful patois of French, Spanish, English, and Indian phrases mixed with phrases entirely of their own creation.
Yeah, beaver tails just don't look appetizing, man.
I don't know. It says that they counted coup, revenge exacted on an avowed enemy. When one of their own was killed, they were out for hair, scalps. They said odd things like, which way does your stick float? What's your preference? They met once a year in giant extended open-air festivals, the Rendezvous, where they danced fandangos and played intense rounds of Monte, Euchre, and 7-Up. Late at night, sitting around the campfires, sucking their black clay pipes, they competed in telling legendary whoppers about their far-flung travels in the West. Stories like the one about the mountain valley in Wyoming that was so big it took an echo 8 hours to return, so that a man bedding down for the night could confidently shout, "Get up," and know that he would rise in the morning to his own echo.
Sure, folks. So, do you know if they still do rendezvous? That's a thing that happens. People get together in the woods and they do mountain man rendezvous where like axe throwing competitions and stuff like that. I had a guy that I knew years ago who competed in those, and how I ended up finding out is he came home from one of these events.
Yeah.
We were having dinner at his family's place, and he came in full buckskin, frayed leathers, and just tomahawks and knives. There's many places he can put them on his body. He gave us a rundown on his favorite skull crusher.
I like it. From these men, too, Carson began to learn how to deal with Western Indians, how to detect an ambush, when to fight, when to bluff, when to flee, when to negotiate. It is doubtful whether any group of 19th century Americans ever had such a broad and intimate association with the continent's natives. The mountain men lived with the Indians, fought alongside and against them, loved them, married them, buried them, gambled and smoked with them. They learned to dress, wear their hair, and eat like them. They took Indian names. They had half-breed children. They lived in teepees and pulled the travois and became expert in the ways of Indian barter and ancient herbal remedy. Many of them were half Indian themselves, by blood or inclination. Washington Irving, writing about Western trappers, noted this tendency. Quote, "It is a matter of vanity and ambition with them to discard everything that may bear the stamp of civilized life, and to adopt the manners, gestures, and even the walk of the Indian. You cannot pay a free trapper a greater compliment than to persuade him you have mistaken him for an Indian brave."
That's cool.
The fur trappers knew firsthand the Native Americans were ferocious fighters, some legendarily so, like the Blackfoot and the Comanche. But they also knew that the Indian style of battle was often very different from European warfare, that it was difficult to engage Native Americans in a pitched battle, and their method was consistently one of raid and ambush, attack and scatter, snipe and vanish. The mountain men said that Indian folks were often like wolves, run and they follow, follow and they run.
That's annoying.
Yeah. If you run from them, they'll chase you, but if you chase them, they run from you. The trappers murdered Indians in countless kill-or-be-killed scenarios, and some made a practice of hammering brass tacks into the stocks of their rifles for every native dispatched. But their greater slaughter was unwitting. As the foreigners of Western civilization were creeping up the rivers, valleys, and across the mountain passes, they brought smallpox, typhoid. They brought guns, whiskey, and venereal disease. They brought the puzzlement of money and the gleam of steel. And their liquored breath they whispered, and on their liquored breath they whispered the coming of an unimaginable force, of a gathering shadow on the eastern horizon, gorging itself on the continent as it steadily pressed its way toward them. That's dark.
It's very dark,
but accurate.
Yeah.
But remember how we had read that some 80% of it was most, the bulk had already died before even the 1600s. The Indians, as far as the East, especially maybe the whole continent, as disease had spread across. Although the Lakota Indian, they didn't have immunity to many of the diseases, and they died and got wiped out on the West. So it does seem that some of the Western Indians were 100 years behind the rest in their demise once they got exposed to things like smallpox. It says that let me see. That they would get attacked by Indians. It says the spring Carson and Ewing's young party worked along the Gila tributaries, moving into the Indian country, had never been mapped. And one day, Young's camp on the Salt River was approached by Apaches. Sensing hostility, most of Young's men concealed themselves beneath pack saddles and blankets, emboldening the Apaches to swoop down on what they thought was an easy target. Soon, the hills were covered with Indians, as Carson recalled. But when the attackers drew within range, Ewing's men sprang from their hiding places and drew their beads. Aiming his rifle, Carson killed his first Indian, shooting him. As an early biographer put it, straight through the nipple at which he had aimed, straight through the heart within.
Oof, good shot.
He does not mention it in his autobiography, but according to one account, Carson then removed his sheath knife and pulled back the dead Apache's scalp. As was common custom among the mountain men, Carson was 19 years old.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Like when you're talking about they were putting brass tacks in their rifle butts, that's not nearly as terrifying to a human being as scalps on a pole.
It's the same thing, though. You're keeping track of all the people you've killed.
Look, if someone starts waving their gun around, I'll be freaked out, whether it's got nubs in it or not.
Look, scalps had dollar bill value at this point.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So you're talking, this is near the Jeremiah Johnson period as well. He comes along a little bit later, I believe, but what was it, before or after? Somewhere in this period of time, though, when the mountain men were kind of at their highest their peak levels, their peak. It says that all across New Mexico, the threat of Navajo raiders gave life an undertow of anxiety. The settlers dwelled in a state of vigilance, always half listening, scanning the sagebrush for movement. Everyone knew some family whose child or mother had been carried off. In the foothills, cairns often studded the pastures, decorated with crosses or flowers. These markers memorialized shepherds who had been cut down at a very young age. New Mexicans learned to hate and fear the word Navajo. So to set this scene, the Navajo basically were way back into, these mountain rocky regions with cliffs and plateaus, something like out of a storybook. And when they disappeared into those rocks and those deserts, kind of like your Moab type country, because we're familiar with that, it's our backyard. You see like these places where these Indians would go back and disappear. And back in those deserts, they could hide, and they actually did a lot of farming, from corn and peach orchards. The peach orchards were phenomenal.
Really? And
they would then swoop down and they would steal livestock and people from the villages, and they'd ride off. And this happened, raiding parties happened every here and there. They're kind of like the Vikings of the plains. And they'd go in, snatch everything, and then run off.
We were up at that Western Hunting Summit, and I was shuttling some people back and forth in the side-by-side, and I had this thought, and I shared it with a group of people, and Joel Turner was there. He was sitting in the back seat, and I was like, I was driving earlier, and I was thinking, this place looks really flat as you're coming down the hill and stuff. And then once you're in the middle of it, it's like, bro, there could be an Indian 10 feet over there, 5 feet over there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they could just disappear, gone. And Joel laughed. He's like, you wouldn't have made it, buddy. I was like, dang, Joel. But it's true. Like, they could be anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You'd make a better Viking than Trapper.
There's not a lot of subtlety involved. If it's a matter of smashing up on the coast and getting the job done, I'm your guy. I'm a demolitions expert.
Yeah. It says, other tribes preyed upon the New Mexican settlements as well, the Utes in the north, the Kiowas and the Comanches in the east, the Apaches in the south, but the Navajos were the strongest, richest, and most creatively adaptable of all the raiding tribes. They were the ancient scourge of an ancient province. As a result of Navajo attacks, the very first Spanish colonial capital of New Mexico, a promising settlement on the Rio Grande called San Gabriel, had been quickly abandoned in 1610 and relocated to the safer remove of present-day Santa Fe. The word Navajo, a word of Pueblo Indian origin meaning people of the great plant fields, first appeared in Spanish document in 1626. The Navajo called themselves the Dene, which simply means the people.
Dang.
An account from the early 1600s by a Spanish friar referred to the Navajo as a very bellicose people who occupy all frontiers and surround us completely. In 1659, Fray Juan Ramirez referred to the Navajo as heathens who kill Christians and carry off others alive to perish in cruel martyrdom.
Well, that sounds like a poor loser.
A half century later, Governor Francisco Suervo Y. Valdez condemned the Navajos for their crimes, their audacity, and their reckless depredation upon his kingdom. The Spanish had tried for a time to Christianize the Navajos, literally chaining them to church pews, according to one account, but they would not tolerate Spanish missionaries. In 1672, a group of Navajos hauled a priest out the doors of his church, ripped off his clothes, then killed him at the base of an outdoor cross by smashing his head with a bell. By 1750, the Spaniards had given up on all efforts to proselytize among the Indians barbaros. In that year, a priest dolefully noted that the Navajos, quote, could not become Christians or stay in one place because they have been raised like deer. For centuries, the Spanish had mounted retaliatory expeditions into Navajo country to reclaim stolen livestock as well as to capture women and children to serve as slaves. But these military forays did little to stop the raids. The Navajo lands were so wrinkled, so maze-like, and so huge that the expeditions were scarcely worth exertion. Conquering the Navajos seemed hopeless and as hopeless as converting them. The Navajo country, noted one Spanish chronicler in the 1630s, is vaster than all the others. In journeying westward through this nation, one never reaches the end of it.
They're always
Desert
so
feels
flowerful
like
when they talk about it.
The Navajos,
like
it's mysterious. It's mysterious, though. I mean, look where they're at. It seems like you can't survive. Where's the water? Where do they go?
Where's the water?
I mean, like, where's the food? Like,
I get it, man. They are. I knew a Navajo guy. His name was Touchin.
Yeah,
and he had a high pitched voice like this. And people made fun of him one day, and he beat the crap out of him. And I found out that he lost a testicle. That's why his voice was like that. You want to guess how he lost his testicle?
This sounds fake, dude.
It's not. I'll show you pictures of him later. He's not a big dude either.
Pictures of his face.
Not his nuts. We weren't that close.
All right.
He bull riding.
Bull. There you have it, Brad Hunt.
Stomped on it.
Not a good way to make a living.
Brad got away with bull's nuts,
but pins in his legs and knees and stuff.
He moves.
The Navajos lived far away, yet paradoxically, they seemed to be close at hand. As though the desert distances did not apply to them, as though miles alone could not check their peregrinations. Maybe that's their predations. It was the Navajo menace as much as anything else that made New Mexico so poor, so militarily anemic, and so unready to resist the coming American invasion. Manuel Armijo, the governor of General of New Mexico, said it best in 1846, and in an 1846 letter to his authorities in Mexico City, quote, "The war with the Navajos," he said, "is slowly consuming the department, reducing to very obvious misery the district of the Southwest." So they were anemic. and down. They could never get ahead because the Navajo just kept them down by stealing their people and their goods and their stuff and killing enough of them that they just kind of always, they'd wait for them to rebuild, and then the Navajo would come back in and steal more stuff, and then wait for them to rebuild and steal it, Viking style.
It's like the grasshoppers from A Bug's Life.
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty much an exact analogy. Anyway, so that's it. That's where we're at. We're going to get into this. It's going to get interesting, folks, because the Navajo are fascinating people, the Diné, the people, and Kit Carson's role in this, because in how basically the West was conquered and the Navajo were basically, removed because the Americans couldn't expand to the West. First of all, California still controlled by the Spanish, I believe. Mm-hmm. And the West is just sort of sitting there, undeclared exactly who it belongs to. Mexico does have Mexico, but they're struggling with the Navajo, and the Navajo pretty much own everything. And at the end of the day, the Navajo are the king in the area, the boss of the region. And so here we are, and the U.S. government, as they decide, hey, we want to take the whole continent to the West Coast. We don't want just the East Coast in the middle of this nation. We want the whole thing. Mm-hmm. How are we going to get it? And you're going to see this is why the book is the epic story of Kit Carson, the conquest of the American West. The West was not America's at this time. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of just a free for all. They're kind of battling it out, but the Navajo are a major, major problem. The other Indians are a problem, but the Navajo just seem to be the richest, the wealthiest, the biggest, and they're quite advanced. The other thing that's going to be fascinating to learn about with the Navajo is they seem to have a different, and I might be wrong. We'll have to refresh through the book, but they seem to have a different lineage than the other Native American Indians.
Curious.
Like a different people and different language,
different land bridge, or
different
something?
Languages. Yeah, like sort of a different.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think if I remember right, that's the case. So the whole thing is just kind of what a wild time, right? To be on the earth, if you go west, not a long lifespan ahead of you generally, but then there are those like John Johnson who lived to die of old age, like in his 80s.
How?
Same with was it his 80s? It was older for how he should have died. Jeremiah Johnson should have died much earlier. Just like we talked about Daniel Boone.
Old.
How did he make it? How did he make it?
People don't make it that long now.
Yeah, and here you are with half the people he knew growing up dying. I mean, everyone died around him. He just didn't. Kit Carson is going to be this way. But Carson doesn't live a long life, actually.
Really?
But the life he lived was jam-packed. I think he dies at 55. But it was a wild ride the whole time. And maybe I'm wrong. Can't remember, but something like that, if I recall. And, for the life he lived, he didn't go out too badly.
Don't spoil it yet.
Yeah. You'll have to come along for the ride, folks. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your support on the show. We'll catch you on the next one. All right, folks. I hope you're enjoying the Dueling Pistols podcast. If you like it, do us a favor and share it with a friend. Help us get this thing to grow a little bit bigger. Tell your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your buddy, your uncle.
Go to
your grandpa.
Hit select all, send.
Just sell it. Just share it with a friend of yours, somebody, and help us spread the word about the show. Thanks for supporting us. We'll catch you on the next episode.